Usually when I do these, I'll introduce the person, but if I think they give a better answer, I'll ask the person who they are. So, who are you, Scott?
That's a hard question to answer. I'm Scott. My name is Scott. I'm a professional speaker. I'm an author. I speak to. I share my story of recovery after a traumatic incident, a motorbike accident that I was in it was 12 years ago now, back in 2008. It was a motorbike accident that I've been pretty much recovering from ever since, and there are many things that I've learned along the way, and that is now my job to talk about those things that I've learned, so that people can learn from the experience that they don't have to go through.
And a large part of what you do is touching on resilience.
Yeah, for sure. It's all resilience. It takes a wicked amount of resilience to overcome not just something that, not just what I've been through, but trauma of any kind. Mm-hmm. It takes so much resilience, and a lot of people don't. There are a lot of people that just don't have the. I wouldn't say the will to get through it, but they just don't have the knowledge on how they are going to get through things. Like, Corona has taken a massive toll on the whole world, on the nation, not just the nation. Sorry, the whole world, everywhere.
Yeah,
and their resilience now is going to be, for the next 10 years, is going to need to be. Going to be fixing people for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm probably a perfect example of that. I had a bit of a breakdown last night about it. Yeah. My mum lives in New South Wales. I spent 2 years in Canada and saw my mum more there than I've been able to see her in the 2 years I've been back in Australia. And, she's having a tough time right now. And I can drive up to the border, but I can't drive a couple minutes past it to her house. Yeah. And that hurts me. And this isn't the government's policies are shit kind of a thing, but
yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is, and it's a shit go. And I'm an example of that's one example out of tens of, probably hundreds, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people just in Australia alone who are going through that same or have a similar experience where they're just like.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I speak to high school students as a professional speaker. I'm a youth speaker, as well as corporates. But when I'm speaking to the youth, I've been told so many stories about what these young kids are going through. Mm-hmm. It was halfway through lockdown. You don't understand how many kids have just given school the flick and said, I can't do this, and actually stopped going to school and stopped. They may in the future go back to school, but just stopped going to school and said, this is not for me. I need to do something else. And then the depression and the anxiety that students are going through. I did a presentation at a school recently. This was before our short lockdown that we just had. It was the Friday before. Sorry, was it the Friday? Yeah, it was the day before that we went into lockdown. Some of the kids that had just found out they're going into lockdown. They were having mid presentation. They were having meltdowns because of the. It was for them to spend another week at home was just going to literally could have killed them.
Yeah. For me, I never had to worry about coming home from school. Yeah. For some kids, coming home is not a safe place, and being at school is
100%
is a safe haven for them. So
100%, and that's what the teachers were saying to me, that some of these kids they live their lives at home, and their escape is coming to school. And the only time that they get to feel in their life, the only time that they get to feel like they're worth anything, that they're actually good human beings is when they go to school, because they're not getting that at home, and that is really, really sad.
It is
really sad for the amount of here in Melbourne, and Victoria, for the amount of months that we have had to spend at home. There's it's just been taken this massive toll on the youth.
Yeah, 100%. And I am looking forward to getting into everything that you do around, with school students, and especially around the VCAL program, which we're going to get into later. But before we do that, you mentioned at the start, in 2008, you had a motorbike accident, which left you, with traumatic and permanent head and brain injuries. Talk about that day and the day surrounding that, and sort of, how do you sort of pick yourself up after that?
Yeah, okay. Well, for starters, I don't have a clue what happened that day because of my memory. I suffered what's called retrograde amnesia. Mm-hmm. So it's retrograde amnesia is retrograde means before the event. So the amnesia, which is memory loss, before the traumatic event. So I had about 2.5 weeks of retrograde amnesia. So I can't remember anything that happened, but I have been told a lot about what happened that day. So everything, I guess, that I'm saying to you is it's a picture that I've built up in my head from what other people have told me.
Sure.
So I was motorbike riding with there was 5 of us. There was a few four mates. I was the 5th, and we were on a property in Smith's Gully, which is in the northeast of northeast of Melbourne, just bordering on the metro area, going out to country. So I was, we were riding, and then I think it was at about 3 p.m. that afternoon. I was riding. There was me and there was a bloke behind me. We were riding, and I think we're heading back to the house because it was the end of the day. And when I was going up the hill that I went up, so you turn around a tree, and then you fang it, and you absolutely you gun it all the way up the hill, and because right at the top of the hill there's a massive landing, and you can get some great speed going along there. Yeah. So halfway up the hill, bit of a blind corner going around the corner, and then it was lights out. I had to hit another mate that was coming down the hill, down the track the same time. Yeah. I've heard people ask me before, why weren't you going all the same way? Yeah. And in retrospect, that's it's easy to say. Of course, why weren't we going around? Also,
does not help.
Does
absolutely could not be less help asking that question after the fact.
Yes, I know exactly. Yeah. So that's not some of the worst things that people have said to me, but
I can imagine. Yeah.
But so we should have all been going around the same way. Probably learned that in motorbike riding 101 class, but I missed.
I wouldn't. I've never been on one.
Yeah. Well, I wagged that class.
Yeah.
Accidentally. No, I didn't get there, and we weren't going the same way. We hit each other, and the impact of the crash. I was probably going about 60 k's. He was going maybe 20 kilometres down the hill. I don't even know if he was going. If he was going that fast. Yeah. But I was going fast, and when we didn't hit each other and knock off. We hit each other, boom, head on. And both of our front wheels aligned. Yeah. And I've got a picture of my bike. Yeah. And you can see the imprint of his wheel in my wheel. Jeez. And the whole front end of my bike was destroyed. But you can see where we hit each other, and that was smack bang in the middle. And I went over the handlebars, went over my handlebars, and I hit my head on his bike, on his handlebars. I'm Not sure exactly where it was. And if you've ever ridden, well, you haven't ridden a motorbike, you just said,
No.
but the motorbike helmet, a dirt bike helmet, has a face guard here and a peak here.
Yeah.
You wear your goggles. And that was basically where my head hit my handlebars. Right there, boom, and that completely crumbled my face.
Yeah.
Because there was no protection on it, so it's like jumping out of a car at 80 k's an hour because of the 20 k's, 60 k impact. The impact 80 k's an hour, it's like jumping out of a car and getting smashed in the face with a baseball bat, and that completely destroyed my face. And it gave me the brain damage. That was how I sustained severe brain damage. And I had a helmet on, but my head was not protected from here to here, and that was where I got smashed. So I required a facial reco, and that was I got a little 10 or 11 plates smashed onto my face, or put onto my face to reconstruct it. And I guess the brain damage is what has been the most challenging thing for me to overcome. And it's not just overcome, it's I'm never gonna recover from the brain damage. I'm just gonna get better. I'm never gonna get back what I've lost. It's getting better, learning different techniques to help me live a sustainable life. And that was what rehab did for me. Rehab taught me how to use my brain again, and how to use things like a diary to help with my memory and stuff. Okay. So I had the accident on the day. Had the accident. There was a guy following me. He jumped off his bike, came to help, and then there were two other blokes that were riding as well. And when they came to the scene, the whole group just switched on, and one bloke rode to the house to call for the ambulance. One guy rode to the front gate to wait for the ambulance, and the other guy stayed with us too, making sure he was still breathing. Yeah. And then the ambulance arrived. A road ambulance arrived. I think probably took them about 10 minutes. And then they realised when they got to the property, because it was on a 30-acre block. It was we were way back in the back paddock. The only way to get there was up a goat's track and in the mud. The ambo wasn't going up there. So the ambulance, they jumped in my car, which was a Nissan Navara at the time. They jumped in there. They drove. And then they drove to the scene. As soon as they got to the scene, I guess one of them would have induced me into a coma then, and then one of them, they called for the air ambulance. Yeah, the air ambulance came. I think when I had the accident, I was knocked out straight away, instantly, and then I didn't wake up. I was still knocked out when the ambulance got there. Yeah, and then when they got to me, so it probably could have been 15, 20 minutes and before they got to me, and I was still knocked out. And then they induced me into a coma straight away. So I was essentially knocked out for 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks. Wow. That was how long I was in the coma for. Yeah. And I was flown off to the Royal Melbourne Hospital where they did they did all the surgery and had me in a coma for 2.5 weeks. That was sort of touch and go, and I talk about that in my book. I was obviously not there, but the whole first couple of chapters is about that time of my life when I was in the hospital. My dad actually wrote emails to other people that couldn't come to the hospital because I don't think that they were allowed many visitors, and the amount of people that he had on his email list, they weren't all going to come and visit in the room while I was sitting there in a coma. They all got onto the list, and then he started typing out emails each day that he'd come back. Pardon me. Each day he would come back, he would write the email of how things were going, and all of those emails are actually in the book, which that was the starting point of my book. When I first got those emails that he wrote me, I thought about writing a book, and then I read through the emails, and then I decided to put them into. I wrote my my own sort of what was in my own head around that, and that was what kickstarted the book.
How hard was it to read those emails the first time you read them?
Yeah, look, before I started writing my book, I'd been speaking about, since day dot, I've been talking about my accident. I'd speak to everyone about my accident, because when you see me walk, you can tell that something's happened. When you go to shake my hand, because I don't have my right arm, I shake my hand with my left hand, people often will ask me what's happened to my arm. And I was, from the very, very start, I was never afraid of talking about my accident.
Yeah.
And it just became something I just spoke about all the time. And if I met you down the street and you asked, and you hadn't asked me about my accident, I'd probably find a way to bring it up.
Sure. And
because that was all I had in my life, from the point that I had the accident till, I was in hospital for 6 months, and then I went to rehab I was at Epworth rehab. I was there for the next 3 years. That was all I had in my life. That was my full-time job.
Yeah.
So a lot of people talk about their work, and this was just my work, and I loved talking about it. Yeah. Because I'm the most knowledgeable about what's going on up here.
Yeah.
I just started talking. So when I read those emails, it was great. It was a really good insight to see what I mean my family, what they were going through at the time of the accident. And it was really, I guess, really heartwarming to see how much my family and how much my friends actually cared about me,
Yeah.
I had people, even from people from England, I had mates that were in England that were on the email list that found out about my accident and wanted to get on the list. Had a mate in Mexico that was travelling around. He wanted to get on that list, and everyone just wanted to know what was happening. And you don't realise until something happens to you like that, you don't realise how many people in your network actually care. Yeah, and that's a really nice feeling. So then I went to after Epworth, after the Royal Melbourne Hospital, I then transferred to Epworth in Camberwell. That was a rehab centre, and they have an ABI unit. In that unit, that's where the serious patients go. Mm-hmm. They have 7 beds that are controlled. That are looked over by 2 nurses. So you basically got waitering on you, hand and foot, I had it for 6 months. If you want anything, all you got to do is press the button. Then you'll have a nurse come to you straight away. Mm-hmm. If you want something to eat, boom, straight away. Want something to drink, straight away. So that was kind of cool.
That's not bad.
And also they had a door that you had to put a PIN number to get in and a PIN number to get out. So you were basically locked up in that room.
Yeah.
I was locked in there for 6 months. But that was because people with brain injuries. It was the ABI unit, the acquired brain injury unit, and people that that have sustained brain injuries don't understand why they're there. I understood why I was there relatively quickly, I guess, but there were people in there that did not understand why they were there. There was an old bloke that he was a gentleman that was 70 years old that went in there on the same day as me, and he left around the same time as me 6 months later, and he went to a nursing home, and he was never going to recover. I was lucky because I was 23, and he was 70 years old. He got knocked off his push bike, and he would often walk into my room and think that was the exit, because my room was right next to the exit door. And a number of times he actually got out of, somebody would come to the door, I'd open it, and he would scurry out. And he got found a number of times wandering up Burke Road. Just because he didn't know where he was, didn't know why he was there, and that was just
that's scary.
It was scary, and I was surrounded by those sort of people like that for the 6 months, and I guess most people actually weren't there for as long as I was. I was in there for a reason. I was in the ABI unit for a reason. I was in there for 6 months for a reason. At the time, it felt like my brain was fine, but obviously, being in there for 6 months, things weren't as good as I thought they were.
Was that frustrating?
Well, no, because I didn't think about it back then. I just realised that it's funny because when I had my accident and when I went to rehab, it was like something in me just said, okay, this is my job. I've got to do this. This is what I've got to do to get better. And my vision of how severe my brain damage was I just thought it was a little knock on the head. I just thought it was a little hit, and okay, it happened in November. I thought that it was gonna take. I would probably get an early Christmas break. I didn't have to go back to work. I'd be in a hospital for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. And then I'd get out of hospital, and I would go back to work, start life again. And then a couple of months came and went, and I realised, well, maybe this is a little bit more serious than I thought. And a couple of years came and went, and then it's like, it finally hits home. Okay, life's not going back to what it was. Life will never be the same as it was.
Yeah.
And it took me a number of years to realise that, hey, now I'm starting a new journey about doing things that I never saw myself doing, like my speaking that I do.
Yeah.
Because I always imagined that I'd just fall back into my old life. I guess it's like a good way to look at it would be like I was walking down a path.
Yeah.
And then after my accident, there's a journey of life. You're walking down the path, and then after my accident, I was instantly on another path, but the path looked the same as my old path, but it wasn't the same as my old path. And here I am walking along that path for a couple of years, and thinking that that's the same path as I've always been on, realising this path is nowhere near the other path, and I'm never going back to that other path. So. As that journey goes along, and as you walk down that path, you start to find new things that come up in your life, and I'm taken me a number of years, but really grateful that I've been put on this path.
Yeah. Was it hard to detach yourself from the old path?
Yes, very hard to realise that in an instant that one life stops and one life starts again, and that life that you lived for the last 23 years of your existence is never gonna come up again. So there's always things that happen these days that I think to myself, it happens for maybe no more than 5 seconds. I think to myself, if I didn't have my accident, imagine what I would be able to do now, work-wise, where I'd be in my career, what life would be like. And I snapped myself out of that because that sort of thinking, reminiscing about what could have been, never, ever, ever a good thing for anyone to be doing. Because the fact is, I'm never going to go back there.
No,
ever.
And I think you can look at it on the other side of things and say there are certain things that you do now that you probably wouldn't have done if the accident didn't happen.
100%. And that's where all my gratitude comes from. It's just looking at all the things that now that I've still got, and the things that I can still do that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
There's many people, many people that I've met along the way that don't have the luxury of even having an arm, to be able to use, to even have their stability. I talk about this, a lot in my workshops and my presentations. Is I could look at my life as all the things that I've lost. I've lost the use of my arm. Mm-hmm. I've got paralysis down the right side of my body. So my stability is not the best. My hip flexors they are a bit worse for wear. My legs, my right leg's good, but my left leg's good. My right leg is a lot weaker. My ankle's not that weak. Not that strong. So it's very easy to misplace it and roll it. Mm-hmm. I tumble down the stairs a lot at home when I'm in a rush.
Yeah,
walking downstairs on carpet in my socks. Not a good sign.
No,
not when you go tumbling down them.
Yeah.
And I could look at all this stuff that I don't have. The fact that I can't work as an electrician anymore. The fact that I can't play sports, two-handed sports. The fact that I can't really run that fast, hop, skip, jump. But I choose to look at the things I still have. I still have my left hand, which is more than other people. I still have my right leg, which is keeps me stable, keeps me upright, and being able to stand up means that I am 100% independent for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Until hopefully nothing ever happens, until I can't use my legs anymore. I'm independent, which means that is how I was able to travel the world on my own.
Yeah.
Which is why I talk about that a lot in the book.
Yeah.
That's how I've been able to do that, because I have the use of my legs. And there's a lot of people that don't have that, and that I'm grateful for.
How important is that, finding that gratitude to getting through the recovery? Because, you touched on the fact that the path is, completely different, and ultimately the path is such a zigzag, all over the shop, day by day sort of thing. But finding gratitude in that process must be like one of the most important things.
Yeah, for sure. I think in any traumatic event or any adversity that you're going through, as soon as we can find gratitude in things, we start to focus on the good side of an event. We start to focus on the positives in life, and this is where the gratitude journal comes into it, and is a big thing to help you instill gratitude into your life, into every day. If you're writing a gratitude journal and jotting down a number of things that you're grateful for each day, no matter how shit your day is, it is training your mind to think of the positives.
Take something.
Think of the positives rather than the negatives. Mm-hmm. And that to be able to do that is, I think that was one of the most important things that I had to achieve when I was going through depression, and because I went through, which I'll talk about in the book also, went through depression for a number of years, and that was, at that time, it was what's happening to me, why has this happened to me, is basically the ultimate question that I was always asking myself, and to be able to look at it and understand that what has happened, and I can't do anything about that. Now I'm just going to focus on what is good in my life and what I can control.
Before we started this, we went and grabbed a coffee,
yep.
and we sort of sat down here, had a bit of a chit chat, and I spoke about the concussions I had and the experiences after, and you went in to explain what it's like for you, every day going for a walk or go and grab a coffee, because I described my experiences when I was recovering from concussions where I feel like I'm a million times slower, and everything I, normally for me is not something I have to think about, but it slows me down. But talk about what that's like for you, going to get a coffee or going to the supermarket.
Yeah, sure. Well, you were saying that it was, that when you had your concussion, it was like you were walking and your mind was
my head was like 20 meters behind
you.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how when you go down the shops, you just have to simply, you have to actually think about, oh God, what am I going to do? I'm going to drive, I'm going to walk, and what am I going to do when I get there? Am I going to go in to get a coffee? How am I going to pay for it? Those sort of things happen, with I'd say with a brain injury, but a concussion is a mild form of traumatic brain injury. So there's three. I guess it's graded in three separate levels of brain injury. You've got a mild, a moderate, and a severe. And concussion sort of comes under the mild traumatic brain injury. So you would still feel all the things that I feel. I just have it amplified tenfold because mine's a sort of severe brain injury. So you were talking about how hard it is just to think about going down to the shops to get a coffee. And for somebody with a severe brain injury, it's all of that and a lot more. I have to think about what am I going to do to get a coffee, but also I have to think about what am I going to do to get out of the house, physically be able to walk out of the house. And this is what I've been taught, why I spent so long at Epworth learning how to walk again, because I have to actually think to myself, okay, so I'm going to extend my leg. I'm going to have to land with my heel first, and then I'm going to roll on the outside of my foot and then push off on my toes. And that happens every single step. And that is to the extent that I have to think about how I'm using my body. And then all of the mental side of it is, how am I going to get to the door? What am I going to do when I get to the door? I'm going to have to open the door, and then I'm going to have to go, where's the elevator? I'm going to have to go to the elevator. I'm going to go down to the lobby. I'm going to walk out along the street, and then I'm going to go across the road and get a coffee. And how am I going to go across the road? Am I going to go to the lights? Am I going to go just across the road? Where is the best place where's the best place for me to walk across the road? And then when I get to the cafe, what am I going to do? What I have to do when I get there? Am I going to have to pay for a coffee? I'm going to have to order a coffee. How am I going to ask the person that I'm talking to get that coffee? How am I going to count the money to get? How am I going to pay for it? Those are all the sort of things that I have to think of. Not necessarily these days. It was 12 years ago since my accident. Definitely in the early days, it was a lot of my life was thinking about every single aspect of every single second of the day. It's thinking. What am I going to do? That's all the stuff that just comes naturally to everyone.
Yeah,
that's the stuff that Epworth helped me relearn how to use. So through my occupational therapy, through my speech pathology, through my running group, which was helping my lower limbs, through the physio, the endless physio that I had at the rehab, and then all the other rehabs that I had, the hydrotherapy. I was in the workshop once a day, learning how to use my hands again, and all of those therapies have built me to be the person that I am today.
Yeah,
both my body and my mind.
Yeah, it's staggering when you literally just outline everything, and I think from one if from my perspective, it kind of sounds exhausting, but I think from, say, probably your perspective, you have to basically say, well, it might be exhausting, but I have no choice. Like, I either have this or, you know what, or I'm not going outside.
Exactly.
And so if you go back into the gratitude and the fact that, you know, you go, well, I've still got one arm, you know, some people don't have one at all. You know, you don't want to be, I'm guessing, stuck in that, you know, I don't want to go outside because it's going to take too much thinking power, or it's going to exhaust me.
100%. And that is, you hit the nail on the head. It's the choice you've got to make. It's you can either live with live your life as, you know, somebody down in the dumps, or you can get over it. I talk about that a lot in my presentations as well, about making the choice to say, okay, things have happened, I can't do anything about it. What am I going to do now? What can I do right now, right in this second, to help me move forward? Mm-hmm. And taking responsibility for the things that have happened to me. I had to take responsibility for that accident that I was in. You know, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't anybody's fault, but I have to take responsibility for the way I perceive that accident. I have to take responsibility for the way and the choices that I make from here on in for the rest of my life. For me to live the life and get over this speed hump, get over every speed hump. I have to make that choice, and the choice is to look forward, not to look back.
Despite years of, you know, numerous physical and mental challenges, you set yourself a goal to travel around the world to ultimately help people who were in a similar spot as you, sort of not at that particular point, but had, you know, you'd been through what they'd been through. Talk about that experience and how incredible it was to sort of be able to do that.
Yeah, so when I went over to rewind back to a couple of years after my accident, I found I was deep in depression at this point, and I got approached by one of my therapists at Epworth. And she asked me if I wanted to go up to the snow and go and snowboard, essentially, because she knew that I'd spoken about skateboarding in the past and skiing and snowboarding in the past. And she asked me if I wanted to come up to the snow with her in a group, which is Disabled Winter Sports Australia. So I went up there with them for a weekend, and that weekend just flipped my mindset completely about my abilities and what I was able to do. Before I went up there, I pictured myself as an incapable person of having fun. Mm-hmm. I was in a box, and it was the disability box, a disabled written all over it. And I, in my mind, had myself in that box. And disabled people don't have fun. Disabled people can't use their body. I'm disabled. I can't do the things that anyone else can do. And that was kind of the mindset that I was in at the time. And when I went away over up to the snow and realised that my body still actually works a little bit, I could still stand up. Physically stand up on the snowboard and make my way down the hill, that just completely changed my mindset. Didn't get me, it wasn't a quick fix, but that was the very, very beginning of my changing of my mindset. I talk about this also in my speaking about the growth, realizing that I am actually capable of doing things, and that is the growth mindset. Whereas I'd sort of always grown up with a fixed mindset, believing that of my abilities are that, and that is it. Mm-hmm. And I had that mindset going after my accident, that okay, now this is what life is, until I went away up to the snow, and I changed that mindset, came home, and I decided to set myself a goal to go over to Canada, because I wanted to go over to help out with their adaptive sports over there, which was ended up took me 2.5 years to achieve that goal of getting over there. And I finally got over there, and I was able to help other people that were in a similar situation as me get up onto the snow and get down and run. And you should have seen the smiles on the people's faces. That was just so heartwarming to be able to give back. After everything that has happened to me, it was just so heartwarming to be able to give back to the people that that were in the similar situations to me. And it was incredible to be able to do that. And I found a really good group in the adaptive sports over in Canada. They were the adaptive sports at Sun Peaks, ASP. They were at each mountain you go to, they've got an adaptive group. And this was the mountain I went to. I went to a mountain called Sun Peaks in British Columbia, and I went to Sun Peaks and got in touch with their adaptive sports group, and I spent the 6 months helping out with them, and they loved the fact that I'd come from Australia and come from my background to help other people, and that was really just felt so good to be able to help out with them.
Yeah. How were you emotionally in those moments? I know you just touched on seeing them smile and go through that, and it was such a good experience, but is it not hard for you to know everything that they've gone through and what you've been through and not sort of be a little bit choked up?
Yeah, look, I think it's more I don't get choked up when I'm with them. It's the feeling that I get when I'm with people like that is, and this might sound a little bit selfish, but it is a feeling of gratitude that I have for everything that I've still got. And to see somebody else that's that's right next door to me and all their challenges that they have, and for them to be able to smile and have fun, that is it's just really makes me it's really gratifying just watching them enjoy their lives.
Ultimately, you moved into the speaking space, doing talks, workshops with schools, businesses, and pretty much everything that around your incredible story and resilience. Talk about that process and sort of how beneficial it's been for you.
Okay, so I started speaking in 2000. I started speaking a couple of years after my accident, and I was still in rehab at that time. And I wanted to just go out. I wanted to go and speak to high school students, to give them, to sort of warn them about year 12s, warn them about what can happen if shit goes wrong. They're just getting their license. They're starting to party. They are going into a very, very high risk part of their life, and 99% of people come out of it unscathed. But there are those that 1% that do those stupid things and do end up. I wouldn't even say 1%. 99.9999% of people come out unscathed, and that 0.0001% of the people that I want to help and that I wanted to warn and to show, the struggles that I go through, that I've been through, from wasn't making a stupid decision, but the struggles that I've gone through after a bad accident. And I started that in 2010, and then I did that for a couple of years, and it wasn't my career. I hadn't planned on that being a career, and I stopped doing that in in 2011. And then that was when I really started to focus more on my goal of getting overseas, And I focused on that. And then I went overseas for a couple of years, and I helped out at a number of two mountains. The adaptive groups at both mountains. I also went to Europe, and I did the whole backpacking thing for 18 months on my own, that was incredible because that was something that I didn't think I'd be able to do. As soon as I mastered that was crossed off the bucket list. I would never be able to do that. And for me to actually get out of Australia on my own with my brain injury, not really even being able to remember things and not being able to plan things that well and not being able to focus my energy that well, that for me to be able to do that.
For 18 months as well.
18 months. And I learned a lot. I learned so much about myself, so much about my body, so much about my mind. And I basically learned that, if I want anything in life, there is nothing stopping me from getting it. Absolutely nothing stopping me. It's just going to take me a little bit longer, a little bit more muscle, and a little bit more resilience to get through and get it. So I got back from overseas and I got into property development. Did that for a couple of years. Built a house at the back of my house. That was sort of a career that was never going to go anywhere. Not in the short term. That wasn't going to pay the bills in the short term. So I decided that I'd get into speaking because knowing that I'd spoken in the past, I thought, hey, I loved it back then, and I'm going to try it again. Started speaking, and then I got into the space, and that was when I started to fall in love with it, and fell in love with being able to share my story, share my wisdom, I guess, if you want to call it that, with others and help them get through things that they might find challenging in their life. Because adversity comes in all shapes and sizes. You don't have to go through something that I've been through, something as major as I've been through, you don't have to go through that to know that you're going through adversity. Everybody, the whole world right now in Corona is going through adversity. And I love sharing my insights to overcoming my adversity. I love sharing it with people that are going to help them get through their tough times, even if it is a loss of a loved one or a breakup of a partner. Things can, might even be a broken bone, and it's like their world's over.
Do you have a specific experience with maybe a single person in one of these talks that's really sits with you?
Yeah, well, I had a girl heard me speak back in 2011, 10 or 11. I had a girl hear me speak then, and she got in contact with me a number of years later, and she wrote me a message on Facebook or an email, and saying that I had. I'll try and recall the email. Something like, "Hi Scott, I am just writing to you because I'm in my final week of placement. I'm at Epworth. I'm at Epworth in Camberwell, and the hospital that you were at, the rehab that you were at, and I just want to thank you for showing me a career that I never knew existed, and I am forever grateful for." And she was in her final year of OT, and she had just she was finishing up her time as an occupational therapist at the hospital that I was at, that had inspired her to start that career. So it was kind of a full circle. And that email, to get emails like that, and I've gotten a few of those emails, to get emails like that is just incredible. And that is exactly the reason I do what I do. And I know that for every person that emails me, there are hundreds more that aren't going to say anything. And I know that there are other people are taking a lot out of it as well. So that is why I continue to do it.
Yeah, I can't imagine how special that is. The fact that, what you said meant so much to this person that they were like, okay, I want to go completely change my life and my life path so that I can now impact people in this space. Like,
yeah, it's the feeling that you have. The feeling that you have created a path for somebody else to walk down along their journey is amazing. It really is amazing.
Let's get into the book. Crashing into Potential. So obviously a large part of the story is this story. Obviously what we're going to cover today is not going to be in complete depth, but talk about going through the book. Obviously, how did it even come about? Like, at what point do you sort of sit back and go, I want to write a book? Like, I've always wanted to write a book, and we both mentioned before we weren't the greatest English students at school. But how, gratifying has it been going through that process, writing a book and, ultimately sharing your story on a sort of a different level to people?
Yeah, look, this book, I started writing this one day, and as we mentioned before, I was never a good English student. So to write a book, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I actually got a book that that looks so good, a book that feels so good. I don't even know how I got it out.
Yeah.
But I did, which is amazing. So this just proves anything's possible.
Yeah.
So I started writing one day when I got the emails from my dad. I started writing, and I think that weekend I wrote about 10,000 words, which was
wow.
I just kept writing. I'm writing, and I stopped then after the initial journey. I stopped writing, and I didn't start writing the book again till a number of years later. And when I finally went back into it, I then wrote. I planned it out more, and I went to Epworth, and I got because every session that you have is written down. The therapist, she'll write notes on the sessions. So every session that I'd ever had was written down. So I was able to get all of those. I had to pay for them. Got all of those from Epworth, which is it was a stack of papers. It was about 400 A4 sheets of paper of notes, I had to go through all that, and I highlighted a lot, and I wrote out a whole timetable because, with a brain injury, with my memory, and I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast this morning. So to remember all of that was challenging. Would have been impossible. But I read through all of those notes, and I started highlighting stuff, and then from there I then wrote all the highlighted stuff out. So I had that all on the basically the best parts of what happened in a timeline, and then it was about just molding my own story from my own head around what had happened. And then this was actually after I'd gone overseas, and before I went overseas, because I knew that if I was able to get around the world for 18 months on my own, I had to write a book about it. So I'd always planned to write a book about. I'd always planned to write something about it, because for somebody with a traumatic brain injury, to the extent that mine was damaged, for them to be able to get themselves around the world for 18 months on their own, that was going to be a story in itself. So when I went away, I wrote a diary every day, and I say every day, I mean probably there were times when I didn't write for a few days, and I'd have to catch up. There was one point that I was in Italy. I was in Florence, and I hadn't written for about 7 days, and I went down to a cafe, and I knew I had to catch up, because if it was going to be any longer, I wouldn't remember what I'd done the 7 days prior. So I went down to that cafe and I spent a couple of hours trying to search through my brain to think about what I'd done in the last week, and I had to end up writing all that down. And then from then on, I tried my hardest to do it most days. And some days it was just writing down. I wrote down 1 or 2 things about what I did, and that would trigger some memories about what I'd done all day that day and the things that I experienced. So I got home from that trip after 18 months, and I put all that together, which was another 38 pages, A4 pages of notes, which was great. That was a gold mine of information about my trip. So then when I went to write my book and I went to put all of that into the book, it was very, very easy to write about because it was all there, just not in book form. And I'd written when I first decided to write a book, I wanted to write my part 1 as my recovery and part 2 as this is how I did it kind of thing, kind of a self-help thing, self-help book. There are many self-help books out there. Mine just would have been another book that was self-help. So anyway, but I wrote that the second half of the book, and I got in touch with an editor. Somebody put me on to an editor up in Sydney. And she was amazing, and I've formed a very good friendship with her over the last five years. And she read my stuff, and she said to me, Scott, part one of your book is amazing. I loved reading about it, but part 2 is terrible. It's terrible.
Thank you.
It is, which was yes. It was a oh, thank you.
Yeah,
that didn't hurt.
Yeah,
I just spent 8 months writing about how I got over my accident and the good things. I've written about all this positive psychology stuff and I've written about the gratitude, written about the mindfulness meditation, written about the purpose that I found and all this stuff that has been found in every other self-help book known to man. And she says to me, Scott, the second half is crap. I want to hear. She don't think she actually used those words, but she didn't like the second half. She said, I want to hear your story. Because I told her that I'd gone overseas and I'd written a journal. Mm-hmm. And that originally wasn't going to go into the book. And she said to me, I want to hear what happened overseas because your overseas trip sounds amazing. Mm. So she then sent me back and I spent another 8 months writing about that. And that was what formed the book. So the whole book is my story. There's no self-help in there. It's all my story. And it is, I am so grateful that she was able to help me craft that book. Mm. Because, I'd written a lot and this book is in my words. It's most of it, 99% of it is in my words. There are just things that I might say sometimes that needed to be reworded. The grammar, she probably helped me with a lot of that. And so she helped me. And she also helped me with a structural edit. So I just wrote chronological for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And she took bits out and put them
in different spots.
To make the story flow better. And that is amazing. And she's done an absolutely amazing job to help me do that. So for that, I'm very, very, very grateful for her to help me with that. So I think that I wouldn't have been able to produce this on my own. Definitely not.
Have you read the book?
I have read the book a number of times. I've read it a number of times. I read it a number of times when when we were editing it. Yeah. I had to read through it to make sure it all sounded good. And then I'd tell her things that I didn't like about it. She'd go and change it, and then I'd read it again. And so I've read it a few times, yeah.
How does it make you feel reading the end copy?
Reading the final copy is I feel really good that I've been able to produce that with her, with the help of other people, of course. But it does make me feel, especially when I read the second part, it really, I can picture myself back walking the streets of Florence, sitting at that cafe, writing down all the stuff that I'd done in the previous week, sipping on my espresso. I remember, like, it triggers so many good memories when I read that. So, you know, if I never sell another copy in my life, I am just so grateful that I've got this, because this can take me back in time. Yeah. And take my mind back in time. And the really funny thing is that because my memory is not that good. I don't remember a lot of things. But I remember so much about my trip. I could tell you exactly where I went for how many days for 18 months. And and I can tell you how I got there. I can tell you who I met there. And the detail of, and that's not just because I had read through all of the notes that I've made. I guess that's probably helped. But I've got such a good memory of it because it was such an enjoyable part of my life. Yeah. It's such an enjoyable event that's happened in my life. Yeah. And when I read it, the feeling I get is just happy. Yeah. Just really happy and grateful that I've been able to
produce that.
Not just produce the book, but been able to get overseas, because it was something I never thought I'd be able to do. The fact that I was able to get through the 3 years at Epworth, and the fact that I after I left Epworth, I then started rehab out in the community, and I still, to this day, am still doing rehab, still seeing a physiotherapist. I've been doing rehab now for 12 years, and for me to be able to get through that, and when I read this, it just reminds me of what I've been through and what I'm still continually getting through. Yeah, makes me proud.
That's good. The reason why I asked that is because, not to segue into stuff that I've been through, but
go for it.
I wrote an article for a website called The Athletic, which is a American Canadian based website. My story was about my experiences in ice hockey and how I'd got from someone being in Australia to falling in love with hockey, and to, you know, being in Canada trying to pursue my dream essentially. And that wasn't a book, but that was an article about pretty much my entire journey there, and I couldn't read it without crying. And it wasn't, you know, shame or it made me sad. It's just reliving so many good memories was just, you know, incredibly difficult for me to actually read and to sort of go look at, you know, I've come such a long way from a kid who was 15 getting his phone confiscated from him at high school for getting, you know, scores texted to him while he was in science failing, to, you know, a kid who is now in a rink in Toronto scouting a game when it's minus 30 outside. It's just not something that I ever thought I would get to. So going through that and reading that is such an emotional thing to me still, like this to this day.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the same. It's from remembering back to the time when I was in hospital, not being able to walk, you know, not being able to walk and not being able to talk, and having things fed to you by a little spoon, and from going from that to years later, being able to fend for myself on my own around the world was just incredible. And when I read it, it just brings all these memories flooding back in, and it's just being proud and the gratitude that I've got for everything.
You, through all of the work you do, you've essentially started a project with VCAL students, which is sort of aimed around sort of kids who can't read and sort of helping teach them that resilience, through your book and through your experiences. I'm a former VCAL student, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. A lot of kids do have trouble learning. Now, I wouldn't classify myself as that, but some of these kids want to learn, but just cannot on a different level, that sort of VCA students can. Talk about that whole process and sort of how special that is.
Yeah, well, it's so I do have a VCAL program, literacy program, with the book, and VCAL. There's a big stigma around VCAL, and the people that do it. The people that basically. The stigma is that the students that do VCAL are the dropouts and the no-hopers. And that's, these kids that leave school are probably going to get it paid more money than the people that go through VCE in the short term. When they start their trades, they're gonna outdo most of the VCE students.
That's not even up for question anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially here.
Yeah, exactly right. But a lot of the students, VCAL is their last opportunity to learn, and for them to be able to, they don't necessarily know how to read. Some of them are illiterate, some of them are dyslexic, and some of them, just don't have that in them, but. The VCAL program that I've got is a literacy program, and it's not teaching them how to write essays. It's not about learning literacy. Literacy is just the vehicle that I'm using to teach them resilience, and the whole program is based around resilience, and it is. Absolutely, what I've been able to produce with the help of two very experienced VCAL teachers has been incredible. We've put together another a 98-page resource that goes through every single chapter with different outcomes in each chapter, and there's a focus on each chapter. There's a theme in every single chapter that the girls have taken out of it, and they've put together this resource that teaches the students about resilience, and that is now in schools. And along with the book, with the literacy program, I've also got I'd also go to the school and present to the students my keynote presentation and my resilience workshop. And a brain injury workshop. So altogether, it's a full resilience package, really. And that, to be able to get that out from a guy that pretty much failed English, to have a whole program around a book that he's written is great. It really is. I love it.
As it stands, VCAL is set to be abolished at the end of next year. What are the plans for that program, sort of moving after that, moving forward from that?
Yeah, so I think that it will. They're stopping VCAL because of the stigma for the students and because of the stigma for the teachers. I guess the way it is it's a dumping ground for the students in most schools, and it's a dumping ground for the teachers in most schools. So. This whole stigma around it is that it's it's second grade learning, so it's getting they're stopping it, but it'll just come under a different banner. They will still have the same sort of content. So my program will still be relevant. There will just be little tweaks to the outcomes that are in there. And the teachers that I've got, they are happy to help me with that. They're more than happy to help me rewrite what we need to rewrite for the program to continue on. But we're about to start writing a Year 10 program as well, because VCAL and the resources that we've got at the moment are all basically they're all Victorian based, and it's only able to do it in Victoria. So we want to take it Australia wide, and to if we're able to write a Year 10 program, that will be able to, and a lot of the Year 10 program will be based off the literacy resources that we've written. Once we're able to do that, we can then take it Australia wide, and I guess from there we can then take it internationally, because learning here is at the age of 16, at the age of 17, learning here is basically exactly the same as learning in America, learning in England, learning in the Asian countries, learning in everywhere else in the world. It's all basically the same.
It's all relative.
It's all relative, and just little tweaks need to be made. So, once we do that, then the next step will be taking it to another country. Who knows where that'll be? Who knows if that'll ever happen? Fingers crossed that's where we eventually end up.
Yeah, exciting stuff regardless of sort of what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that the pandemic and COVID specifically has sort of really impacted people in the space that you're in, with, being able to go out and do public speaking outside of the VCAL stuff and everything you want to achieve there that you've just outlined. Where do you want to go next? What are your goals for sort of maybe the end of this year, next year, and sort of where you want to take this? Yeah,
sure. Well, I guess through COVID has been, we decided to launch the program at the start of last year, which was the start. We launched it, I think the week that we went into lockdown, first lockdown, was when we launched the program. That was probably the worst time in history to launch any educational program. And we ended up doing double the sales goal. We ended up doing double the sales goal for our first year. So we knew that there was a need for this. So this will continue to be taught in schools, and we'll continue to push it out to schools for a long time, because resilience isn't it's not something that's going to need to be taught this year and that's it. Not next year, that's it. Or the year after. It's forever going to be something that students will need, that teachers will need. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to continue on doing that. But then we're also going to continue writing getting it into the Year 10. And then after that, it's then just my presenting. I'm doing a lot of presenting to high school students. I'm doing presenting from grade 6 all the way through to year 12. Mm-hmm. I present also to teachers, and then from there also I also do corporate speaking as well. So I speak to organisations that need their resilience, because it's not just high school students that need to overcome adversity. Every single person in the world needs some tools to help them overcome the adversity that they're going through. So I do corporate speaking as well. So I'm just going to keep continuing on with that, mm-hmm. and doing things like this. And also, one thing I forgot to mention is that because the VCAL students, a lot of them don't like reading. A lot of them don't like reading. Some of them love reading, some of them don't like reading, and the teacher was finding, a lot of the teachers that were teaching this program found themselves reading the book to the students in their classes. Mm-hmm. And I decided to make their job easier and read the book out to the students. So I read the book out on my podcast, and that's great. They love it because they'll sit in class and they'll listen. They'll be able to listen to it, or they'll be able to go home and listen to it and then go back to class and start doing the questions. But the book is when I read the book out in my podcast, it's kind of like it's like a 3-dimensional book, because I go in and out of the book. So I talk about stories that I remember along my journey, and things that will come up and that will remember, like when I was traveling, that didn't make it into the book, that I might think of, and I'll just go off on a rant and I'll start talking about that, and then I'll go back to the book, and makes it a very, very interesting read, more so than just sitting here reading a book. So I'm doing that, and just living the life in this space and building my brand, building my profile, and absolutely having a ball doing it.
Yeah, well, that's it, mate. It's very exciting stuff. You're a great man with an incredibly powerful story, and I'm very thankful and appreciative of you to come on and be so open and share that. So thank you very much, and all the best with everything moving forward.
Thanks, mate, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure.